I'm Kara Ray, founder of the Powerful and Uncensored Entrepreneurs. I'm a mother, stepmother to 3 beautiful children. I'm a wife and a proud entrepreneur. I'm a mindset coach specifically for the powerful and ambitious online female entrepreneurs who desire to create wealth and abundance in all areas of their life. The Powerful and Uncensored Mompreneur podcast is for the ambitious women and mothers who are ready to rise together and empower one another. Get plugged in each week for unfiltered and uncensored conversations between myself and industry leaders who are here to support you. They have unwavering points of views and empower women to believe in themselves. We will be discussing business, spirituality, sexuality, energy, strong points of views, manifestation, and what I like to call breaking the stigma topics, conversations that will no longer be silenced. This is a safe place to reclaim your power of being a woman. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Powerful and Uncensored Mompreneur podcast. So today I'm extremely excited because I have Kelly Rompel on the podcast. Hi. How are you?
Hello. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to share this space with you. And so you guys, I just want to give Kelly a little bit of an introduction. So Kelly is a mindset and empowerment coach. So she's also a pharmacist and a best-selling author specializing in natural anxiety relief. So this conversation is going to be incredible. I'm excited to have this. But she's also the author of Don't Tell Me to Relax, host of the Rebel White Coat podcast, and a creator of the program Limitless. So Kelly combines her knowledge to help women lower their anxiety, manage stress, recover from burnout without lowering their standards for their business and personal life. So this is going to be a juicy conversation.
Yes.
I'm here for it.
Awesome. Let's do it.
So before we dive into the podcast, I always ask this one question to everybody that I have on, and that is, what are you currently celebrating in your life right now, and either your business, personal life, or both? Let's celebrate it.
Yes, celebrating so many things, but the number one thing that really sticks out to me, because I think it was such a huge goal that I was striving for a while, is my book, the release of my book. So I'm really, really excited about that. And to have it out there has been such a mixture of emotions of like excited and like nervous as all hell, and just, yeah, all of the feels, right? So, but yeah, that's what I'm really most excited about right now, because it just was a big deal to me, and I can't believe that I'm a freaking author. It's like one of those feelings like, is this real?
Yeah. Well, and of course you're an author. Like, this is incredible. This is amazing. So I want to ask you, because I think it's a good, intro to a question for you in regards to why do you feel called to write, your book, Don't Tell Me to Relax? What was like this call in wanting to write that?
This book was written for women who were like me, that ambitious woman who struggles with the anxiety, the overwhelm, and the burnout, all the things that come with being a high achiever, all the things that come with wanting success. And I was that woman, and there's nothing wrong with being that woman. I'm still that woman, but I have different intentions behind why I do what I do now. It's before I was very much into, I was driven by ego and low self-esteem and feeling unworthy. And that just got me to a rock bottom place. And so when I found myself on the other side of that, and I'm always a work in progress, always will be, but I knew I needed to write a book about it, because I knew I was not the only one struggling with being in this achievement trap that we get into, and being driven by what others think about us. And I need to do and achieve and all these things in order to feel worthy and get that recognition from other people. So that really, going through that for a lot of years, took me into burnout, and I just really hit like a rock bottom moment. And I knew I had to write about it and share my struggles. And what's been so amazing is the messages that I get back. I think the most common thing I hear is that it's relatable. And I couldn't ask for anything better with a book, is for women to to say, me too. I know exactly what your struggles are. I've been there. I feel ya. And thank you for writing this book, because now I know I'm not alone. And that's exactly why I wrote it.
I think that's beautiful. And I love that you're sharing that, and I just currently, launched a journal, but I'm also in the process of writing my own book and having just like writing out your journey. It's almost like this process of, what's the word I'm looking for? Of understanding for yourself and compassion for yourself for everything that you've gone through. And so I think it's beautiful that you've shared in that space, especially in regards, and then women are relating to it. I've had so many conversations with women about things being relatable or feeling like they're in this space and they just felt like they couldn't say anything. And, being able to write those words down and empower somebody else to potentially do the same is just absolutely beautiful and incredible. So congratulations to you and celebrating
and you.
you.
You too. It's such a big deal. It really is, to put your work out there, for not only judgment, but it feels so raw.
Yeah.
You feel like there's nothing left to hide. It's out there and people see it, and it's like, oh shit. Well, that's what I'm currently feeling is, oh shit.
Well, and I think it also, there's a lot of women and even mothers that, place these excuses upon themselves as to why they can't do a certain thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, like, especially yourself, you're really showing women that it's possible to really put everything together and be honest and vulnerable about the space and where you're at in your life, but also to stop making excuses for yourself.
Yeah.
I think we live in a society where we justify our excuses, and I want that to stop. But I want women to just like reclaim this power and just own their shit, really.
Right. And it's this beautiful balance of, the subtitle of my book is Decrease Anxiety Without Lowering Your Standards. So with that being said, like I truly believe that there's balance is a bad word, because does it exist? I'm really not sure. But it's this dance between being a high achiever and also being somebody who can pull it back in and know when you need to take care of yourself, know when you need to stop pushing, knowing when hustling is not working for you and when you need to find more alignment. It's this back and forth of, I'm still a high achiever. I will always be a high achiever. There's nothing wrong with having goals. I'm that woman. But I'm not overcome and controlled by the anxiety around having, like, quote unquote, having to do all these things and creating these imaginary deadlines for myself that don't even exist. Like I'm such a to-do list junkie. And back in the day, I would literally come home from work with like 5 or 6 to-do lists. I had to-do list about my to-do lists.
Yep.
And right.
I relate.
I know. I have so many women like, oh my gosh, you do that too. And I had all these to-do lists and I wasn't getting anything done because I was so panicked and overwhelmed by everything that I wanted to get done that I wasn't getting anything done. And then I was just constantly spinning my wheels and burning myself out. And I wasn't really that productive. I was just stressed about what I wanted to achieve and become. And instead I found a lot more, my work is a lot more enjoyable, and when I'm, more in an alignment with my passion and my purpose. And when I have, when I'm doing it for the right reasons, I'm doing it because it's passion driven and because I want to help people, instead of this like ego based, I must do these things and get these credentials behind my name and I must show people that I am worthy type intentions.
Well, and I like that you were talking about, doing things because you're passionate and intentional behind it, because you can do all the things and you can be the high achiever and you can be in that hustle mode. I like to call it that delicate dance between the masculine and the feminine energy.
Yes.
Your masculine hustle, your feminine, like self-care, self-love kind of piece. And, but in regards to just like taking care of yourself and just honoring that energy, I agree with you how I don't really believe that there's this necessary like balance.
Yeah.
I just think it's a delicate dance. And
yes.
that both are needed in certain areas, in certain ways. And you just have to know when that's needed. Like, I think, as you grow and because we're ever evolving, once we learn how to tap into that, it becomes easier and easier. But that's a whole other topic. Yeah. But what I have a question for you, because I know some of our listeners, they maybe have heard of you before, but this also might be the first time where they're like, tell me more about Kelly. Tell me more.
Yeah.
So for the listeners, can you dive into, your journey a little bit,
Mhm.
as, you as a pharmacist, but as a mother, but then also, moving into this, and just how this all kind of came together and just felt aligned. And I just want to hear more from you, and the listeners want to hear
Yeah.
more from you. So
Yeah.
feel free to share whatever you feel called to share, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Sure, sure. Oh gosh. So I always, this question always gets me because it's like, what's your story? And it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many like little pieces that kind of played into how I got from where I was to where I am today. And I think that really pivotal moment where like I can remember everything kind of shifting for me, and me starting on a journey from the old, I call it like the old Kelly to the new Kelly. And it was when I was actually running in a half marathon. I had trained for months for this half marathon. I worked my ass off. I don't even like to run, and I'm crossing this finish line, and I had like these visions of like people cheering for me, and like my family was going to be there, and it was going to be like this magical thing with they were going to be holding signs, and I was going to feel so proud of myself. And I crossed that finish line, and like it was like so anticlimactic. I was immediately anxious, and I was immediately I just crossed, and I was supposed to be so proud, but I was like, I don't even feel that way. Like, what's next? Do I sign up for a full marathon now? Like, what do I do now? And I'm like, I haven't, like, my leg cramps have not even set in yet, and I'm already like on to the next,
Yeah.
and so it hit me hard that day, because I was like, why is this just not enough? Like, I just did all this training for something I don't even like to do, and I did it just to say I could do it, and now I'm like, that wasn't good enough. What's next? And so it kind of sent me into this rock bottom moment of realizing that I was just trying to keep my mind busy. Training was a way for me to stay out of the house. Training was a way for me to keep my mind busy. It was a way for me to kind of lower my anxiety and to not pay attention to what was actually going on in my real life. And what was actually going on was I was in a very toxic marriage, and I knew we were heading for divorce, and I was sort of ignoring that fact. I wasn't taking care of myself. I've had patterns of toxic relationships, patterns of just not full. I wasn't fulfilling my own needs. I did all the things right. I grew up, graduated high school, went to pharmacy school because I needed to get the quote unquote good job, high paying job. My parents would constantly remind me when I was younger that I needed to get a good job that paid well, and I would have a good 401k, and I would retire rich. And that's just what you do, right? You build the nice house, you have the car, the kids, all the things, the white picket fence. And I just was in this place of like, I just built this huge, beautiful home. I was in a marriage that was heading for divorce. Had the nice, amazing car. I was working as a pharmacist. I was like freaking 25, 6, and I had all these things. And I'm like, I feel so unfulfilled right now. Why is that? I was just very anxious, and I couldn't put my finger on it. So that kind of fast forward, and I got divorced. I really had to pick up the pieces. And I realized that I didn't need all of the things. I didn't need the credentials. None of that felt fulfilling to me. And I kind of dived into personal development because I was at a loss for what to do. And this was before like personal development was cool.
Yeah.
You know how now it's like everyone does personal development.
Yeah.
That's what you do. Well, this was before that. And I remember I was like doing like Google searches of like, why am I not happy? And I was like printing off these workbooks of like, trying to help me figure out why my life sucks and all these things. And I was doing it behind closed doors, and I was like hiding it. But I really fell in love with the personal development world. And I started fitness coaching because I thought, well, I'm into fitness. I'm into health. I need to do something with my time. I need to feel busy because that's what I do, because I'm an anxious person. I have to go, go, go. And so I went into fitness coaching. So, which I loved because I felt really connected to the women that I was helping. But what I was seeing with these women is that they all were trying to fix an exterior thing that was really an interior thing. And I just noticed these patterns, and I started to see patterns within myself as well. And it just was this natural process of me diving more into personal development, getting a stronger spiritual connection, starting to really love natural medicine too. I went through a period of time where I got on a med for depression. It was during the time where I was in my toxic marriage, and I was told you need to go get help. So I went to the doctor, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know what I need help for. I'm just here because apparently I need to get help. And he's like, well, here's an antidepressant and maybe go get some marriage counseling. And so I just did what I was told. But I knew that when I started taking that med, I felt terrible. Like I didn't like it. I hated the way I felt, and I knew I wasn't fixing the real problem. And so a couple months later, got off of it and really just dove into natural medicine, natural ways to kind of help myself. And I was that pharmacist who started giving advice on natural remedies. And so it just sort of transitioned, the fitness coaching with the love of natural medicine, sort of just transitioned into mindset coaching. And here I am today. So long story long.
Hey, I love that you're explaining it. It's, it's real, and, women relate to us being honest and being real about our journey and how we've transitioned from X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And in regards to, toxic relationships, and anxiety, because this is like, I know this conversation is going to be powerful, not just for our listeners, but also for like myself, because I've struggled with anxiety for years, anxiety and what they called depression. Until I had spoken with, another doctor who said, I don't actually believe you have depression. Yeah. He was like, I don't think you do. He said, I believe you have anxiety. He's like, oh yes. He's like, you have all the signs, all of this, like everything leads to you having anxiety. He's like, but I don't know why anybody puts you on a depression medication or why they thought you had depression. And I said, really? Like, I didn't think I had it before, but because the doctor was telling me and I'm supposed to trust, this is what we learn. This is as a society are taught to trust. Right. And so finally, when I was told this, because, we had a conversation on your podcast about how I went into postpartum and all those things as well. But I was never comfortable taking medication. I have never been a person who wants to. I guess it also comes from growing up and watching my family take medication unnecessarily and become addicted to it, where I never wanted to do that. And depression medication, like you were saying, made me feel gross. I had said to you that like I had felt numb. When people say they feel numb, I never understood what somebody meant by that until I felt it. Where I was like, no, you can't feel numb. What is that? What is that feeling? How do you describe the feeling of numb? Well, you can't unless you feel it. Like, honestly. And
nothingness.
It is nothing. Like I literally could look like, to explain numbness is like, I was looking at my child and I knew, like I told myself, you're supposed to love her, but you don't feel love. That's literally what numb feels like. When you're looking at someone and then it scares you. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, this is weird. This is not normal. Why am I feeling this way? And so I want to chat with you about how because I know that you've said that you've assisted clients really like, go from being on prescription medications to not needing prescription medications. And as a woman who myself struggles with anxiety, and there's going to be women who are listening to this podcast and being like, I don't know if I could ever be off my medication. And like, what is like something that you would just, guide them towards, or a conversation that you might start to have with them? Because I feel like it's so important, because I feel like depression and anxiety are almost extremely common now, where it's just like, oh, you have anxiety? Me too. Like, I literally feel like it's one of those conversations. And I just wish more people knew about that you didn't have to take a medication. And I just want to hear your perspective on it. Yeah. I kind of did a whole roundabout way of explaining that, but go ahead.
No, I love this. And for me, and so I just want to start by saying anxiety looks different for everybody. Yeah. So I have people come to me, they're like, oh, I have panic attacks. Other people are like, I can't drive. I'm so worried I can't drive. And so for me, mine was high functioning anxiety. So mine was just masked by doing all the time. I literally could not sit still until my head hit the pillow at night and I was exhausted. And then it led to burnout. So first of all, it looks different for everybody. But also the conversation always starts with the fact that it's never one thing. you go to the doctor's office and they sit you down and they're like, oh yeah, you tell them you're anxious or depressed or just not feeling well, or you're in a toxic relationship, and they're like, oh, here's the medication, and it's a chemical thing, and that's just what it is. Here you go. And you're sent on your way 3 minutes later. And so we have been led to believe it's a chemical thing and there's nothing that we can do about it. And it's a brain issue. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, chemical factors play a role, a very small role from what I've seen. And there's a lot of other things that come into play. So spirituality comes into play, situational things. Yes, there's a little bit of chemical. There's a ton of emotional, a lot of situational, gut health issues. So I take a very holistic approach to it. And you really have to look at it from every angle, because it's never just one thing. And so I always kind of start the conversation there, and awareness is everything. You cannot make a shift or a change in your life without realizing what the heck's going on. I did not know I had anxiety for a long, long, long time. And until I realized it, I couldn't do anything about it because I didn't know. I was literally unaware of the fact that I had it. And I don't like labels and diagnosis either. But I just didn't know. And so when I heard the term high functioning anxiety, it was like, oh my gosh, everything clicked for me. I'm like, this is, and I didn't want to fall underneath a category, so to speak, but, I very much resonated with it. So I always kind of start there. And a really quick win for the listeners is to get a hold of the chemical side of things first. And like I said, is a small part of it. It does play a little role, but gut health is everything. Our gut is our second brain, and the majority of our happy chemicals that keep us relaxed and happy are made in our gut, not our brain. Like 85% is made in our gut. And so it's very frustrating for me to hear. It's like, oh, I just have this brain problem with the chemical thing. I got to take a medication, and that's just it. People need to quit accepting those diagnoses and just, it's not the whole answer. And it's frustrating to watch. And I feel like people don't advocate for themselves enough. So I always start in the gut. And if we're being honest, we all have inflamed guts. We all don't get enough fruits and vegetables, and our we don't have a chance in the nutrition department. We just don't. The way we are in our diets and the processed food, and I don't care if you sit and eat fruits and vegetables all day long, our soil is depleted. There's chemicals everywhere on all of our food. It's just the way it is. So I always start by putting my clients on a very, very potent, a high quality whole food vitamin regimen. And these are vitamins made from food. So your body recognizes them. It's not lab created vitamins, which I didn't even realize until I'm talking like this year, that vitamins, most of them are made in a lab. And so no wonder our bodies don't know what to do with these vitamins. They can't absorb them. So anyways, it starts with the gut and getting the inflammation down. That means a high quality vitamin on board. That means less processed foods if you can. That means less stress, less inflammation, and getting your gut healthy so your gut can do what it needs to do. Your gut cannot make these chemicals that it needs to make you happy and relaxed if it's all inflamed and jacked up. So we start there. I honestly feel like that's kind of the easier part to start. We start with the gut, and then we kind of work into the other sort of fun things, I think, like the spiritual sides of anxiety. Looking into your situations, your emotions, and kind of working through some of that stuff. But that's kind of what it looks like. The main thing is to take it from a holistic approach. It's never one thing.
Okay, well, I love that you just shared all of that, because as a person who herself struggles with anxiety, and, you were talking about like our soils and our food and the foods that we ingest and inflammation. But in regards to like my gut health, that has been something that I've been focusing on extremely in the last, honestly, I would say it's been an issue the past few years, but it's something I've been focusing on and wanting to change the last two. Yeah. And I've seen doctor after doctor, and they all tell me that nothing is wrong, nothing is wrong. And I always ask them, like, I'm going to be real in this episode, guys, but like, I don't go to the bathroom daily. I can't. And that's a problem. And I have changed my diet. I've taken the vitamins, I've done the different things. I've taken the Metamucil or everything that I've been suggested to do, but somehow something isn't clicking. And I know that that is half the cause as to why I don't feel good through my day. And so but why it's like that still after changing and implementing things, I don't know. And so when I ask questions and somebody can't give me an answer, it is frustrating. So trying to learn about your own body and really get it back to like optimized health, I guess you could say, it is. And like gut issues has run in, you know, my family for a long time, but also, you know, anxiety and depression and all these different things have too. But I didn't want it to like define who I was, and I wanted to change that. But I've had a lot of issues with this. And so do you come across, you know, a lot of women that end up having the same issues?
Oh gosh, yeah. And I was the same way. Before I realized what I was suffering from, I had irritable bowel syndrome. I had heartburn. I wasn't pooping. And I went in for a colonoscopy at age 22 because they thought I had ulcerative colitis. So, and it turns out I didn't. I had stress and a lot of toxicity in my life and a shitty diet.
Yep.
And so once I kind of got a hold of my external environment and my mindset, all that shifted. And like we're talking, I mean, probiotics are amazing too. Probiotics and vitamins are so important. Whole food vitamins. And I'm happy to, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to do a free consult on vitamins and how to get the right ones and all that stuff. I'm big on it. Like I told you before we even started recording, I'm like, I'm a vitamin snob. Like
I literally am like writing down questions like, ooh,
yes, I am. It's so important. And like I said before, and how you talked about the doctors and you go there and it's frustrating. Let me tell you, they don't learn these things in school. I didn't learn these things in school. I went to freaking pharmacy school and I didn't realize that there's natural remedies and vitamins make a difference. The right vitamins that aren't lab created. All these things we aren't taught. And so that's why sometimes you have to do the research yourself or reach out to somebody like me who's a vitamin snob. And, you know, so it's, I'm just really passionate about it. If you can't tell, it just because they're only teaching you what they know. And so it's not that they're doing anything wrong. They just don't know. They don't have time to sit down and research all of these things that are coming up. So.
Well, and you know, I like that you just touched on how did you say you were 22 when you had a colonoscopy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm 26 and I just had a colonoscopy this past year. Mm-hmm. And they told me that everything was fine.
Yeah.
They said that everything was clear, everything was great. And he literally said, I have no idea why your bowels aren't working. I was like,
so frustrating.
Oh, well, I was beyond relieved that because they thought I had colitis. So because my mother was diagnosed with colitis at a young age. Mm-hmm. And so they were like, well, this must be what's going on. And I'm like, well, can we please figure it out and make sure that that's actually the case or not? And it got me worried. And then once they said that everything was fine, I was like, well, this still, once again, I'm at ground zero and don't know, but I'm grateful that nothing else is wrong and you didn't see anything weird in there. But at the same time, it's like, if everything looks clear, why aren't things functioning? Like it's like a key question into, yes, the food that you're ingesting, what you're doing, the exercise you're taking, the vitamins, and all these things combined together. But when it looks clear on the inside, it's just like, you sit there and you wonder, well, why is my body not functioning properly then? If it's clear and it has the space to do its thing, what else is off? Like what else is, you know, in balance, I guess is the word I could say. But I could talk literally for days about all of this because literally it's been something that has been going on for so long. And I think it is happening to so many people. And these questions, people should like advocate for themselves, like you were saying. I think advocating for yourself is huge. And that's why I fought so long. And I even did the same for my husband. You know, colon cancer runs very predominantly on his side of the family. And I told him, like, have you ever gotten checked? Have you ever made sure your gut health is in check? Have you ever just made sure that you're taking care of you? And he's like, well, no, I was always taking care of other people. And I said, okay, well, it's now time for you to go and make sure that everything is okay. what happened. He went to the doctor. They found polyps and that were actually cancerous. And so he literally saved his life by going. And
Wow.
he wouldn't
Yeah.
have done that if I didn't push him to go. But like, people need to advocate for themselves, that if
Yeah.
this happens and you need to go and you want to get things checked, you can have that checked.
Yeah.
Like, just
And
because one person says no doesn't mean it's a
Mhm.
no. Sorry,
That's
go
right.
ahead.
No, that's right. No, absolutely. And it doesn't always, and in your case, I'm sitting here thinking, thank goodness they didn't give you a diagnosis. I know that's frustrating for you to walk out and have zero answers, but that also gives you some space to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
And to ask maybe some not so common questions that your GI doctor is going to ask you. You know, they're going to ask you the questions that the A, B, and C questions that they learned in school. You
Yeah.
know, they're not going to ask you the situational things. Are you taking care of yourself? Where's your mindset? Where's your vegetables, your vitamins, all these things that actually really, really matter.
Yeah.
It's not part of what they do in most cases. I can't speak for all of them, but from what I've experienced, it's very like robotic and here's what we were taught and this is what we're
Yeah.
word vomiting onto you, and then you give them your answers and you walk out with a piece of paper and that's the end of it. And so, and at least that's what happened to me. I walked out with like 2 prescriptions and nothing was resolved until I realized that I had to fix my external environment. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and we have, like, when you're talking about stress too, because I firmly believe that stress is like a major factor into why, you know, causes like for our gut health and issues that we have, or
Yeah.
anxiety, and the reason why that happens. And, you know, some situations and circumstances are completely out of our control, but there's also other things in our life that we can control, like taking care of ourselves and our mind and our
Mhm.
body and our soul and all these different things. And that's something that I've leaned into. And so even we were talking earlier here, before we hopped on the podcast, in regards to this current pregnancy and how I'm actually taking care of my body and I'm eating the right foods. So I have noticed a change in the way that I'm functioning. I'm also
Yeah.
pregnant. So it's, your body functions
You're going
different
through it all. Yeah.
around. So you're like trying to figure out the balance between the two, but it's being mindful of just like yourself. And this pregnancy has caused me to be even more mindful. And maybe that's also because it's not just me that I'm caring for, like I'm caring for an unborn child. So it's making sure that they're getting everything that they need, but also I'm getting everything that I need, because ultimately they receive it from me.
Right.
So it's important. And so I love being able to have this conversation with you. It's oh man.
It's so, so important. And not only for that, but also for breaking the cycles with your kids and breaking
Yeah.
the maybe like the learned behaviors, kind of going back to the anxiety part of it all. A lot of anxiety too is learned behavior. We pick up these habits and patterns from our parents,
Yeah.
and maybe their anxiety didn't show through as panic attacks. Maybe they were just really, really hard workers like my parents were, and they held more than one job at a time. And it felt very chaotic, and just you must work hard and you must earn money, and you might like it was always like this feeling of needing more and needing to earn more, and like this lack mentality, right? And so I
Yeah.
kind of picked up on the underlying anxiety, and that's also a learned behavior. That's another thing that we kind of need to look at and address when we're talking about anxiety is what have you picked up, and what patterns are you needing to release, and what patterns are you really needing to release for your kids so you can break that cycle and
Yeah.
not teach that to your kids. And I'm trying to be very mindful of that too with my kids. I've got a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and an 8-month-old, and they're sweet little sponges, and they pick up on everything that we do, and it's scary, and we have to be mindful. And I try to teach them to take deep breaths when they're upset, and I try not to tell them not to cry. And I'm not perfect by any means. My goodness,
Yeah.
I think I even yelled at my kids tonight because they wouldn't go to bed. But it's breaking the cycles for our kids and trying not to put our habits and patterns of what we've learned, our anxious behaviors, trying not to pass that along to them.
Well, and I like that you're touching on that too, because I just want to go back in regards to, when you're talking about parents. I wrote this thing down actually while we were talking, where it was do all the things, be all the things, eat, sleep, repeat. Like it was
Yes.
just like for this constant, what's the word you used? High functioning anxiety. There we
Yes.
go. So when I grew up, my father was the man who was go, go, go all the time, didn't sit down,
Mhm.
didn't want to sit down, wanted to do all the things, be all the things, get everything done, and then sleep and do it all over again.
Yes.
And I always wondered how he did it. And, at one point, my father ended up shattering his kneecap and breaking his leg in 3 places, which caused him to be laid out on a couch. And
Ooh.
I had never seen him more miserable in my life because he
Mhm.
couldn't be this high functioning anxiety, go, go, go. And he was so angry and frustrated with everything until like we have conversations like this where we realize like we are a byproduct of our environment.
Yeah.
And so, especially growing up as a child and being a step parent myself, and these children coming from, what was previously a toxic relationship between my husband and his ex-wife, and what they had gone through and seen to now, it has been trial and error. Like I'm not a
Mhm.
perfect parent. I've yelled at my
Yeah.
kids. I've screamed at my kids. I've lost it, whatever, popped my top, whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
But
All the
I've
time.
been the mom who then sits there and cries and feels guilty because she yelled at her kids. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
also the mom that goes and talks to my kids and apologizes for my actions and tells them, hey, what I did was wrong. I don't
Yeah.
want to teach you that this is okay because what I did is wrong. And they're learning that even I'm an adult, that I still make mistakes, that I'm not perfect, and that they don't have to be perfect. And like even recently with my stepson, we've had a lot of issues. A lot of things have come up for him. He's changing. He's 11 years old and he's growing and he's becoming, a young man. But he's also learning how to push boundaries and get, push for what he wants and utilize his voice.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to a point where we were constantly arguing and it was this constant push pull, but I was trying to control the outcome because as a parent, we always think we can control this outcome.
Yeah.
And then one day I sat down and I said, well, instead of thinking that I need to control this, why don't I just let him speak and we'll figure this out? Magically, it was the most beautiful conversation I've ever had with him. And I literally sat there in awe, being like, wow, if I would just allowed him to choose, we would not have been arguing this whole freaking time. Like,
Yeah.
and but teaching my kids, like even today for example, my stepson was trying to have this meltdown about his PlayStation, and I just said, I understand you're feeling an emotion, but I'm not the person that you need to direct this emotion towards, and we need to figure out why you're feeling this emotion and talk about it. I said, because I don't want to hear, like, I don't want to be this like, bouncy ball for your emotions. I don't want to be the
Punching
person
bag.
that
Yeah.
that you take out your emotions on.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, I said, do you feel like you should be crying? And he was like, no. Do you want to be crying? No. So why are you crying? I don't know.
Right.
Okay, well, let's figure this out. What are you frustrated about? Can I help you with it? And then we sat there and we talked it through and he was fine. But a few weeks ago, while we were trying to figure this out, it wouldn't have been the same. We would have been communicating completely different. And so I like that you're talking about, listening to your environment and being, I guess a positive role model, but also owning when you make a mistake, because
Yeah.
I make mistakes. Like me and my husband, we've argued in front of the children before and we try our best not to. And we've always taught them, like, if we're upset about something, what do we do? And their usual response is, you take it to another room. And
Yeah.
we do, because they don't need to hear those things. It's not something they need to be around. But it's I love that we went into this direction about this, because I feel this on a very
Yeah.
deep
Well,
level in
I do
regards
too.
to conversations. And yeah.
Big on my heart recently too, because I am trying to learn more about calm parenting. And I think for somebody who has anxiety, that's a really difficult thing.
Hmm.
And so I'm trying to be very mindful of my emotions. And like you said, control. Control
Yeah.
is huge for somebody with anxiety. And we feel like we have to control every aspect of our environment. And our
Yes.
kids are an extension of us. So we feel like we have to control what they're doing. And we forget that they're tiny humans with their own minds.
Yeah.
And their own emotions, and what they get upset about, we may never understand, but it's not about us. I read something the other day that was so impactful for me, and it's made a big shift for me in the way that I talk to my kids and the way that I parent. And I'm still learning. Like I said, not perfect, never will be. But I read that we have to be willing to just let them have their emotions and to understand that it's not about us all the time. And we get so caught up in the fact that if our kids act in a certain way, it's because of us always. And we have to control how they're feeling and what they're doing, and their tantrum must stop. And we come from this generation of parents, or the generation above us, is this mentality of, I'll give you something to cry about. If you're going to keep crying, I'll give you something to cry about. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that as a child. And now I think our generation is a lot more emotionally aware that emotions are healthy and that kids need to learn how to deal with emotions. I really freaking wish they would teach an emotional class in schools. I think that's so much needed, because kids don't know how to deal with things. And we were never really taught either. It was like, you don't cry, you shut up, you don't cry, and you move on with life. You're a big girl, stop your tears, let's go. And so we were taught to suppress, and now we're learning that suppression's bad. And it's causing all this anxiety and built up emotions and things that we've never learned to work through. And that's unhealthy. And so now you've got us who are so much more aware that emotions are an issue. And now we're trying to teach our kids, and we don't know what the hell we're doing because we were never taught. And so it's hard. It's frustrating for us because we're trying to do better. We're trying to break this cycle. And, we're still learning, you know. And I can so relate to this conversation at such a deep level right now. And calm parenting is not something that I'll ever be perfect at, but it's something that I'm really working on really hard right now. And it is about talking to your kids and figuring out why they're upset, and knowing that they're allowed to feel that. Like, kids have tantrums for a reason, and I think adult tantrums are okay too. Like, I really feel like allowing your emotions to work through you and flow through you, and allowing yourself to feel and acknowledge how you feel instead of saying you don't deserve to feel that way. Stop it, you know. Allow your feelings to freaking happen. And then that's how you release them and work through them and learn from them and grow. And you know, built up emotions are toxic as well. And I think all toxins are bad to our body, whether it's chemical from our food, from our emotions, from our relationships, from our outside environment, from our stress, whatever it is, it's all toxic, and it all matters in the world of anxiety. So just kind of another,
I like how you went there. And I just want to touch on, you know, I was going to talk about, especially with my father, because, you know, my father has struggled himself with, like, you know, anxiety at times, and I remember having a discussion with him because I was so frustrated one day and I snapped at my children, and he sat there in the kitchen with me and he said, I think I taught you a few things that I wish I never did. And I was just like, what? He said, you know, you're more like me than I ever thought. And he just said, like, and he's like, there's some amazing qualities that you have received from me. And he's like, but you also decided to take on some of the ones I'm not so proud of. And he just said, and that was in regards to, you know, this need for control, or this snapping really quick. And because it would trigger my anxiety. And he just said, like, there is a better way to do this. And I wish I would have done that for you. And I wish I would have been that parent that did that. And it's this awareness, like, ever since I stepped into this coaching industry, ever since I started connecting with other women and talking to my parents, because this didn't fit their societal norm. Like you said, it didn't fit this, like, you know, white picket fence, having this house, having this marriage, having this incredible career, going to school. It didn't fit that. Like, I tried that. I went to school. I had a career. I did all the things. I worked in the medical field. I was a paramedic for 6 years. Like, I did something completely different to what I'm doing now. And then I had a family, life shifted, I changed, and ended up doing something that my dad was like, this is taboo. Like, what are you doing? Like, don't do this.
Understand.
And at first he actually called it, he was like, well, this is stupid. I was just like, what? But to him, he didn't understand it. And he apologized about that because he just said, this is unknown to me. I don't know this. This is not common. And now I share every moment with him. Every aha moment, every time, like the first time I had a client sale, the first time, I did anything, when I mentioned to him that I was going to be a published author, he was like, excuse me? And I was like, yeah, like I just submitted this. He's like, shut the front door. No, you didn't. And I was like, yes, I did.
So exciting.
So sharing these moments is fun, but also, having a family with my daughter, because she's almost 2. And I watch my dad with her and how much love and kindness and nurturing that he has for her, that it is probably one of the most beautiful things I've been able to experience in my life, because everybody looks at me and says, that's how your dad was with you when you were a kid. That's how your dad was with you when you were this little girl. Like, this is how he was. You had him wrapped around all his fingers and toes, and he cared about everything you did and every bump and bruise and everything. And to watch that, it's like watching myself at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
It is this experience of watching, like, yes, my father might feel bad for something he might have done. So like, as a parent, as you or I, where we're like, oh shit, I yelled at my kids. Well, my dad did a lot of amazing things, and I've also done a lot of amazing things. And so being able to watch it a different perspective has given me outlook as a parent to know that I'm going to have shitty moments, but I'm also going to have 1,000 more amazing moments that cover that shitty moment. And,
for sure.
When we were talking about controlling and anxiety, my anxiety came from not being able to control a situation that turned into me wanting to control my environment in my home. So that was through like cleaning and constantly going and doing things all the time. And if people weren't doing it with me, it made me anxious. And so just being able to learn from other people, like, I think that's the most beautiful tool, especially being able to go on a podcast like this. I've learned a ton of information from you by just having this conversation.
Yeah.
And it's really empowering to know that if you just have a conversation and open yourself up to this possibility that things don't have to be in a box, that there's so much perspective to things. I just wish people had so much more perspective on life and didn't beat themselves up all the time. I'm guilty of it.
Oh yeah. And the societal norm thing is such a huge conversation too. And for me, that's the big shift I made recently. I sold the big, beautiful house that I built. I moved on to acreage. I live in a camper currently, and we're building a house, and it's like a Quonset hut style house. It's like metal and different, and we're just doing things a lot differently. And the societal norms, the stuff that I felt like I had to conform to, really gave me a lot of anxiety, and I never really realized it because I felt so unfulfilled in that place, and I felt so unlike myself. There was no authenticity there. It was me going through all the steps that I was supposed to do, right? And so stepping outside of that has been really healing as well. And so I want people to realize that you are your own person. Like, you've got to do what feels good to you, whether that's stepping outside of whatever box society has created for you, going on whatever business adventure you feel like you need to do, taking the risks that you need to take, doing whatever it is that your soul feels like it needs is so powerful. So you don't feel so constricted. Because that's how I was feeling. That's the best way I could describe it. I felt so constricted and just frustrated by this life that I had created that I didn't even want.
Yeah. Well, I know that I could talk to you forever and ever about this topic, about multiple topics, because, we've talked about anxiety, we've talked about holistic, nutrition in that matter. We've also talked about how you end up going into this frame, this area of expertise that you have, and to writing a book. We've talked about so many incredible topics.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. And kids and, communication and giving yourself grace. It has been a really empowering conversation. And so for the women who feel connected to this, who want to reach out with you to any of the topics that we've discussed in here, how can they connect with you further, Kelly?
Oh, I would love to connect with all of you. Please reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram. That's probably my favorite place to hang out. And I am at Kelly Rumpel, KELLYROMPEL. So it's KELLYROMPEL 1111. Yes, it's an angel number for all of my woo-woo girls out there. And then my podcast is Rebel White Coat Podcast, or you can just email me at kellyrompelcoaching@gmail.com.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to add, sorry, go ahead. I totally cut
No,
you
I
off.
said I would love to hear from you. Reach out to me.
So I'll make sure that all of those are also added in the show notes, you guys. So if you guys didn't catch that, you can just go. It'll be hyperlinked and it'll take you right to Kelly herself, and you can chat with her further, because I know that she has so much more insight and so much more to tell you. And make sure you tune into her podcast. It's an incredible podcast. I had the pleasure of being a guest, and it was amazing. And so I want to thank you again for, sharing this space, for being on here and having this open, vulnerable conversation with me. And to everybody else, I will see you guys all in the next episode.
Thank you for having me. See you later.
Bye, guys.